Alright, I think I have this working. I've never done a video on my Mac. Um, Alright, I chose to do the poem by Wendell Enemies. Um, just going to, yeah, it's a pretty basic poem, but it's a repeating theme. If you are not to become a monster, and think of your enemy in a negative way, then you're going to have to either ignore them, which makes you a monster, or you are going to have to actively hate them, as the poem says, but the alternative it gives that is the only way out, it seems to be, is to forgive them. And that seemed like a very Christian thing to me. I spoke out right away, and through our exercise and some research, I found out that Wendell Berry is actually a Christian, and he's a Christian activist, it turns out. And through his environmental activism and his activism against even Christian mainstream, he must have developed a lot of enemies. So I thought that must have had something to do with him in this poem and trying to come to a resolution with being an enemy of the groups that he created or he went up against. So the title of it is Enemies. I think that's supposed to be taken literally. The theme that comes up again and again is monster. So keywords I found in this is just monster, of course. Also the theme of forgiveness I went over. Light in the end after forgiveness. And possibly the pitiable aspect of his former enemies once he forgave them. So keywords monster, forgiveness, light, and pitiable. So having enemies is something that is slightly unrelated, but I thought of Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill said that if you have enemies, good, it's because you actually stood up for something. And that's obviously true of the author of this title, of this poem. So, I mean, this man, William Barry, he took the gospel seriously. Just a little bit more history about him. The poem reminded me about the Christian narrative of forgiving your enemies. In fact, it's something you say before you take the Eucharist is you have to forgive those who trespass against you. And that's exactly what he's advocating for in this poem. Yeah, a little bit more about the man. He was an advocate against the inhumane, non-Christian tactics we used in the Vietnam War. How are we supposed to save people, he said, if we were decimating whole populations of people? And that's not justified based on his beliefs. He also was an enemy against Christians because of their arrogance. He was mad that they didn't stand up for environmental concerns, which he thought was something that Christians should do. Basically, through my interpretation, I went through the entire thing in our poetry analysis sheet, but the recurring theme is being a monster, how that seems to be not a good thing in his eyes. I described it as toxic. It seemed like there's no way out from the beginning of the poem, his resolution being forgiveness. If you are not to become a monster, don't care what they think, but then you become a monster on the opposite end because you don't care what they think. If you are yeah, love for your enemy, that might be a thing, but even love for your enemy doesn't go enough. Forgiveness in the end is what's needed. So uh, that's my conclusion. I'm going to start there and see how I can get with this paper. And yeah, thank you.